Hello, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange, and today I'm here to do a spoiler-free review of Devolution by Max Brooks. This is a book that I received for review through the audiobook website Libra FM. I'm going to have more information at the end of this video, but I do have a link down below if you want to check out a trial. And this story is a horror story that is part survival and part creature feature. And this specifically follows a group of individuals that go off to live in an isolated community. They want to reconnect with nature and get away from city life. And wouldn't you know, when they are in this community, something goes wrong, as it usually does in horror books. There is a natural event that causes them to be cut off from outside help. And on top of that, there is possibly something like a Sasquatch or Bigfoot walking around their community. This story is specifically told from the perspective of a young woman named Katie who has gone off to this community with her husband. They have a very troubled relationship, and she is also working through her own mental issues. She has a lot of OCD and is working with a psychiatrist. Her psychiatrist encourages her to journal her experiences, and so a lot of this book is told from the perspective of her journals, and so we are reading those out. This book in general has a really unique structure to it. This book is partially told in journals, but also is interspliced with different interviews from so-called experts who offer their explanations and opinions on Bigfoot, the community, and just the situation or the massacre that occurred. And I do want to mention specifically that I did listen to this book on audio, and that experience really did color how I felt about this book. I think that listening to this book versus reading it is really a different experience. Now, most of you are probably familiar with the author because he wrote World War Z, which was an oral history of a zombie outbreak. And this book is in some ways similar to that because, yes, again, it's told from multiple perspectives and you have interviews, but I was actually surprised how different it felt. That book is very epic in scale and is more focused on larger political landscape that occurred after the zombie apocalypse. And this book instead is very intimate. This book specifically follows just a small group of people in an isolated community, and it's much more character focused. You spend a lot more time getting to know the characters and their backstories. And it just didn't feel very similar, which is good because I worried about this book feeling like a copycat, and it definitely doesn't. Instead, I would actually say that if you enjoy World War Z, I'm not sure if you'll enjoy this one because, again, they're very different books. You certainly could, but I don't think it's a natural if you like A, you should read B. Instead, this book actually felt more like a horror fiction podcast. If you enjoy those, I would definitely recommend giving this one a try. As I mentioned, I did listen to this on audio, and there's an amazing audiobook cast behind it, a lot of really famous actors and actresses. The main story is told from the perspective of Katie through her journals, and that is done by Judy Greer. She is one of my favorite actresses. She does a lot of really good comedy, but I'm not entirely sure if she worked in this role because if you're familiar with her, she has a really high-pitched, bubbly voice, and I think she works great in movies when she's the sidekick, the funny girlfriend and all of that. But in this story, it's much more serious, and her bubbly voice just didn't quite fit the tone of the story. So not my favorite voice, but I loved every other voice that they included here. This book does have a very small piece done by Kate Mulgrew, which is one of my favorite narrators, but it is probably only like 10 minutes long at most. So I definitely don't think you should pick up this book just because of that narration, because it's only, again, a really teeny tiny spot in the story. But overall, if you want an audiobook that is really well produced, I definitely recommend trying this out. It was just very engaging, and again, just felt like listening to a really good podcast. In terms of the story itself, as I mentioned, this is part survival story, and I really did enjoy those elements. A lot of the story was more quiet, dealing with the fact that they were going to run out of food because they were stuck in the situation and didn't know how long it was going to take to get out. So the characters are going around taking inventory, determining how many calories they need and how many calories are available, so perhaps triggering to anyone that is avoiding diet culture these days. And if you enjoy those aspects, they are highly prevalent in the story. And they do have to seek out other food sources, which does include skinning and eating small animals, so warning there to anyone that doesn't really enjoy those aspects. But towards the end, this did turn into a proper creature feature, and Bigfoot possibly shows up, and I really did enjoy that as well. There are some good gory moments. It's not over the top, but it certainly goes there. This is definitely a horror book, and it was a lot of fun, very action-packed towards the end, and you do very much worry for the characters because the author is not afraid to go all out and really give you an exciting story. Personally, my favorite parts of this book were the interspliced interviews from the experts. I just thought that they really grounded the story, and I liked that they gave more of a scientific background to it. Overall, I did enjoy this book, but I'll be honest that enjoyment largely came from the audiobook experience. I feel like if I had read a physical copy of this, I wouldn't have loved it as much, which is unfortunate. So if you're gonna check it out, I personally recommend really trying the audiobook version if that is something that you do. If you're someone that listens to audiobooks, really try to get your hands on this one. I did mention at the beginning that I did get to read this through the Libro.fm review program, and if you're interested in trying that service, again, I do have a link down below. And this is a service that is very much like Audible in terms of how it's structured. So you get a credit every month that you can spend on a various book. They have a really good program when it comes to returning books you don't like and a really good large collection. But the nice thing about this service is that it's not affiliated with Amazon, which is kind of a terrible corporate company that a lot of us use, but reluctantly. So if you want to support a different audiobook company, I like Libro.fm because they actually partner with independent bookstores, and part of the money that you're spending actually goes through these bookstores, so you get to support independent bookstores while reading audiobooks, which is a really nice way to feel good about your reading. So if that's something you're interested in, again, links down below. Otherwise, going back to the book, I would love to hear from all of you that have read this, whether you read it on audio or physical copy. I'd love to hear your experience. Do you think the audiobook version colored your own experience, or would you have loved this book as much if you read a physical copy? And for those of you that did read the physical copy, did it hold up? Is it good if you're just reading the book, or was it a little bit less exciting because it didn't have those fantastic performances behind it? All that being said, thank you so much for watching. If you haven't yet subscribed, I do a lot of reviews on this channel, talking about horror, science fiction, thrillers, all of that. Hit that notification bell, give this a thumbs up to help me out, and I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.